Good evening. I hope you've had a good week. It's been a little while since I checked in, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about insulin, and some other hormones, and some insulin resistance issues that you may have been hearing about when you're looking into keto diet and weight loss. Dr. Westman, that I've talked about in the past from Ask Adapt, has talked about the ghrelin and leptin, which are hormones that they have discovered that have to do with hunger. Ghrelin actually creates hunger, and leptin makes a person feel full and turns off hunger. What they have found, at first they were excited. They thought that they had discovered maybe if you give someone some extra leptin, that it will help them not be so hungry. And they found that you can have high levels of leptin and still have hunger. And so they found that insulin, the blood levels, elevated blood levels of insulin, actually may impact the ability of leptin to actually work and help you feel full. So that was kind of it's been an interesting topic to take a look at and see what they are finding out about that. Um, on a similar note, talking about insulin, there is a YouTube presentation that I have been watching by Dr. Jason Fung from in a low carb down under conference that they held. The name of it, if you want to look it up, is called A New Paradigm of Insulin Resistance. And it has a lot of really good information in it. Sounds really technical, and he can be a really technical guy. He's a kidney doctor, a nephrologist. But this particular presentation is one that he breaks it down in a way that is pretty easy, I think, to understand. So his bottom line is that insulin resistance, he says, is the heart of type 2 diabetes. And of course, type 2 is the type of diabetes that you think of where for with people who are obese, and used to be more elderly people get it. Now younger people are getting it as well. So, what exactly is insulin resistance, though? So, when we eat food, our body puts out insulin. When we eat sugar, it puts out insulin, and our insulin levels go up with the more sugar and carbs we eat, then the higher the insulin levels go up. The purpose of the insulin then is to drop our blood sugar, and the way it does it, it actually helps store the sugar that we're not using for energy. It stores it in our liver as glycogen, and then it also helps turn some of that sugar into fat and stores it in the liver as well. When we don't eat, then our insulin levels drop and that sugar and fat are pulled out of our liver. So, insulin is kind of the key on the cell to let glucose into the cell. But when we have insulin resistance, it keeps our cell from unlocking, and that sugar just stays as fat and glycogen in our liver. So, with a normal function, we would insulin would produce new fat for fuel, but with insulin resistance, eating sugar and carbs leads to more sugar that goes to the liver, and then we get what's called fatty liver, which is the sugar changing into fat and being stored in the liver. So stored sugar and stored fat both happen because of all of the insulin levels that have been in response to having so much sugar intake. And then eventually the insulin can't change into fat into the liver because there's no more room in the liver. The liver is full. So then what it has to do is the fat and the sugar have to come out and be stored in other places in our body. So Dr. Fong says in his video that you actually can see evidence of increased liver inflammation quite a while before you have the type 2 diabetes. And so that's where when you go in and you have your liver values and they start talking about things not being quite right, maybe you need some medication for stuff, it most likely has to do with your body starting this process of having the insulin resistance, storing too much fat and sugar in the liver, and not having room for it anymore. So the problem is not actually a lack of insulin, which we think when your blood sugar starts going up, you need more insulin to help deal with the blood sugar, but it's actually an overload of sugar and no more storage room for it. So one of the things that's really interesting is that fat is created by eating starches and fructose. And we've always thought it was created by eating fat, but it's not. It's created by eating starches and the sugar or fruit sugar. So sugar, you'll hear them say fructose or fructose. I grew up in hearing it fructose, so that's how you'll hear me say it. It is only metabolized in the liver. Glucose can be metabolized in the body for energy, but not the fructose. It goes directly to fat because the body already has enough glucose that it's getting, and so it doesn't know what to do with that fructose, and so it'll just automatically go to fat to be stored in the liver for, to save it once again in case there's some famine coming up down the road. So fruit sugar, come to find out, is the fructose is can even be harder on your liver than starch glucose. So say things like if you eat potatoes and rice and those types of stuff, even though it also can create some of the same issue, the fructose does it directly and causes even more problems. Interestingly, table sugar is half glucose, half fructose. So part of it is going to energy in our bodies, and part of it is just going directly to the liver to be metabolized. So when we're talking about fruit and oh well, it's healthy and it's like vegetables, actually our body is looking at it more as candy and turning everything into fat with it. And so when you kind of think about it, if it, you know, one of the philosophies of paleo is that you would eat whatever people ate back, however many years ago when everything wasn't processed. And so if you had fruit, say for example, here we have berries that are ripe in the spring in the California area. And so you eat those berries, and what's the purpose of that? Well, then they don't have a super high glycemic index level, so their sugar isn't quite as much of doesn't have quite as much of an impact on your fat development as some other fruit does. But you have this in the spring, and if you think about in the past, what would be the purpose of that? Well, you would put a little bit of fat on your body, and then during the summer, maybe you didn't have as much access to food. If you have a dry spell and you couldn't get the all of the food that you needed, then that would hold you over a little bit. And same way that in the fall, if you have the more sugary fruits, put even more belly fat and liver fat on, then hopefully that would hold you through the winter when you had less food available. So that's one philosophy out there. I find it interesting that, maybe that's the case. So, in talking a little bit more about this, one of the things that they have found, according to Dr. Fung, was that when they have when a person has weight loss surgery, they have shown that if they had type 2 diabetes previously, they have a complete reversal of the type 2 diabetes because of just not eating and dropping those sugar levels. So the when they quit eating, the liver fat shrinks, and then they get rid of their insulin resistance. And so that has helped with the understanding, helped the science world understand this whole insulin resistance just a little bit more, since more people have had the weight loss surgery and they've been able to see how it works. The other thing that they found is that when they quit eating so much and quit having so much sugar and glucose and everything, they also drop the level of fat in their pancreas as well. So Dr. Fung says primarily think of your body as a sugar bowl. So the bowl, you're sitting there, you've got this bowl on your table, and you can pour some sugar in it, but say you take a big bag of sugar and you start pouring it in. and you pour more in. Well, eventually it's going to just overflow because there's no more room for the sugar. So when you keep adding more, the sugar eventually spills into your blood. And insulin, you have to give yourself insulin then because you have this high blood sugar. It actually does not get rid of the sugar out of the blood because you have that sugar in there. What it does is it crams the sugar back into your body in all kinds of other places, like your eyes, your kidneys, in your fat cells, anywhere you can get it, and you become just more and more heavy. So the problem with this is continuing this problem process throughout the years of eating sugar, eating starch, you have your insulin, you keep eating more sugar, you keep eating more carbs, more starch, keep on putting out more insulin. Your body keeps on trying to figure out where to put all of this stuff. And basically, it goes into your cells of your body and it just starts destroying the cells. And so then that's why we see people with all of the problems from diabetes. It's because of that sugar that your body just doesn't know what to do with. And so eventually it breaks the cells down and you have problems with diabetes. Your diabetes will lead to things like blindness and decreased circulation, and eventually people may need to have limbs amputated, etc. And then there's cardiac issues. It starts a complete process throughout your entire body. So really, although it's difficult, the complete reversal can occur, not of the damage that you've already created in your body, but it can reverse your diabetes if you quit putting the sugar in your body. So that's where a person really needs to start thinking about food as medicine rather than just food as entertainment, like I like to call it. And I know that's one of the things my husband and I had a discussion about. Yeah, you have the fruit and other sweet stuff, and maybe it's time to look at, is that something that I really should be putting into my body, or should I be sticking more to the proteins and vegetables and those types of things. And so interesting stuff. So once again, Dr. Jason Fung, Fung, and I would take a look at YouTube. He has a lot of information. Some of it is very technical, but it's pretty helpful. So, hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you later.